Okay, today starts a new chapter, 8.1, and today we're talking about samples and populations. When you think of a sample, what do you think?
Like the stuff at Publix?
Yeah, Costco. Samples are the best, in my opinion. But a sample is a piece of the whole, right? So in these grocery stores, Costco, Publix, they're giving you a sample. Why? Why do they give you a sample?
To test to see if you like it. You can see if you like it.
And buy the product, right? Yeah. So the company, that's not Costco. That's the actual company that's selling that product. They'll get on a rotation with Costco to hand out free samples of their products so people will try it and buy it. All right, and it's proven to be pretty successful, which is why it's still going on. All right, that was a very successful method of sampling and ultimately to promote their businesses. All right, so samples and populations is exactly what it sounds like. A population is the entire group of people or objects. A sample is a part of the population. So oftentimes, surveying an entire population is not feasible or practical. It would cost millions of dollars to conduct a simple sample just of the residents of the state of Florida, even if it was just a basic question, because it costs money to get that type of information out. So if we want an opinion on the residents of Florida, instead we would take a sample, a piece of the larger picture. But in order for a sample to be an accurate representation of the population, it must be unbiased, which means that it is truly a representative of the population. And it also must be random and large enough for accuracy. Okay, so I can't ask 4 people in Florida what their opinion is on a topic and say, oh, well, these 4 people represent all 5 million of us. Right? That just makes sense, right? So there isn't necessarily a percentage that we're going for, but there are, obviously values that are within reason. So a biased sample would be the opposite of that. It's not representative of a population, okay? And one or more parts of the population are favored. So in the first example, we're looking at a scenario that says you want to estimate the number of students in a high school who ride the bus to school. So which sample option would be unbiased? All right, so would it be 4 students in the hallway, all students on the soccer team, 50 12th grade students, or 100 students at random? All right, so just think your answer to yourself and circle it in your notes. Okay, what do you think? 1, 2, 3, or 4? All right, which sample is unbiased? All right. Okay, what do you guys think? Just give me your answers.
4.
I think 4. Okay. I had a couple people say 1. So let's go down the list. Okay, so 4 is the correct answer. Not necessarily 1 from this class, but just overall. 1, when we think, well, I just randomly asked 4 kids in the hallway, that does sound good, but what's the problem with option 1 being? Just tell me. It's not a large enough number. I'm trying to make it represent all the students in the high school, and I only asked 4 people. So that goes back to what we were just saying. I know they must be doing some work outside. It's not an earthquake, I promise. You can see it shaking. Okay, number 2. Why is number 2 not representative? All students
On a soccer team.
on a soccer team. So now you're targeting a specific demographic in the school, the soccer team. Well, maybe all the soccer kids do ride the bus to school because they have a game after school and they're riding the bus anyway. And so, maybe that kind of comes into play. So you can't just ask them. What about number 3? Why is number 3 not?
They can drive. Because it's 12th graders.
They can drive.
Yeah, good. I was wondering if anybody was going to say that. 12th graders usually drive, right? Mm-hmm. So that's going to drop way down after kids turn 16 because they might be driving to school. Okay, so that would not be good. All right, so we established number 4. Now let's look at a different scenario. What if you want to estimate the number of 12th grade students in a high school who ride the bus? Now which sample is unbiased? What do you think? Everybody paying attention? I can kind of tell who's not. Okay, what do you think, guys? 3. Now it's 3. So as soon as I change the question, now you're like, well, 3 is obviously my answer because it's targeting that specific population. You never would have said 3 to the first question, though. So you see, guys, as soon as we change our targeted population, different answers could be acceptable. For example, could anybody think of a scenario where number 2 now would actually be an unbiased sample? Can anybody think of one? Joel?
Number of people that ride the bus that are on the soccer team.
Exactly. If I want to estimate the number of students in a high school who are on the soccer team who ride the bus to school, then I ask everybody on the soccer team, right? And then now it's an unbiased sample. Okay? Got it? Yeah? Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. All right, just a little try it example for you. All right, so would number 1 or 2 be the unbiased sample? Just circle it and discuss it with your neighbor. All right, guys, would it be number 1 or number 2? 2. Definitely number 2. Every 5th student. So now let me ask you this question. Okay, what would be actually the percentage of the 8th grade that was surveyed?
25%.
Okay, so I surveyed, according to this information, I surveyed 1/5 of the grade because I asked 1 out of every 5. So if I surveyed 1/5 of the grade, what percentage is that? 20%. 20%. So you think 20% is low, but I mean, I would say that that's still an okay sample because remember, sample is supposed to be a part of the population. 20% is okay. Now, if I had said 2%, that's a problem. Okay? Good. You guys did well on that. All right, so are these conclusions valid? Here's the scenario. You want to know how the residents of a town feel about adding a new landfill. Determine whether each conclusion is valid. First of all, has anybody ever driven or ridden by a landfill?
Over there.
We do. Did you know that probably 50-something years ago now, there was a landfill on this campus? Okay, so obviously it's been inactive for a long time. And yeah. So back in it might have been more like 30 years ago. It was on the back part of the campus.
For the tennis ball, for the soccer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway, landfills, okay, obviously aren't usually very pleasant, right? Okay, so you want to know how they feel about adding a new landfill. So here's your 2 scenarios. Number 1, you survey 100 residents who live closest to the new landfill. Table A shows those results, okay, where 10% support and 90% do not. Then on scenario 2, you survey 100 residents at random, and table B shows those results. And those results, 40% support and 60% do not. So I want you to tell me, for number 1, are those results valid? Yes or no? So write it on your paper. Don't say the answer out loud. What do you think? For table A, for scenario 1, are those results valid? Why or why not? And the same thing for number 2. I just want you to kind of think through these scenarios based on what we've been talking about, the biased versus unbiased, and we'll discuss it in a minute. What do you think about scenario 1? What do you guys think? Valid?
No.
Okay, someone raise your hand and tell me why not, Maddie. Okay, it's not random. It's not random. And more specifically, who did they ask?
People right next to it.
The people right next to it. So do those results kind of make sense, right? Because they're being directly affected by it. Obviously, there will be a very heavy presence of do not support because that affects home values. You know, you don't typically want to purchase a home that's close to a landfill just because of the negative impact on your environment. You don't really want to be outside. Okay, so it's not random. Okay, I say no. Okay, it doesn't represent the population is really probably the best answer. So number 2, what do you say? Valid?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And why do you think it's probably more of an even split?
Because they're unbiased, because they don't live close to one spectrum.
What do you think? So, you know, and I mean, guys, we can apply this to a lot of scenarios, right? If it doesn't affect me, kind of, why do I really care too much? You know, the town needs a place to put the trash, so it's got to be somewhere, so that might be my mentality. So maybe that's why it's more of a 50-50 split. Then you have those who would really empathize with the people who are affected, and they're like, yeah, that's still not a great idea. Okay? So they try to put these things in more rural parts of the town so it doesn't affect the residents. Okay? So, yes, because it's random and large enough. It's random and it's large, so it represents the population. All right? To represent the population. That's what makes it valid. All right. Any questions? Any questions? You guys following along okay? All right, so in example 3, it says you ask 75 randomly chosen students at a school how many movies they watch each week. There are 1,200 students in the school, so you need to estimate the number of students in the school who actually watch one movie each week. This is going to involve setting up a proportion. You have one question on your homework that would possibly apply to this, although you don't actually have to set up the full proportion. All right, so let's look at what it's asking us. All right, remember, to set up a proportion, I need to have ratios on both sides, and I must be comparing the same values, top and bottom, on both sides of my proportion. All right, so how many students were selected in the survey? 75. So that's the sample out of the population. Okay, sample over population. I could have done population over sample as long as the other side matches. So the let me ask you, how many students, according to the circle graph, okay, said one movie each week? That's what I'm asked.
21.
One movie each week, it's 21. So is 21 the sample results or the population results? That's the sample out of the 75 people. So I put 21 on top. Out of the 75 people, 21 said they watch one movie per week. But what I don't know is what the projected amount would be for the population. So this is just population in general, and this is population for one movie. Sample over population. Does that make sense? Okay. So now I solve the proportion. Which method would you use?
Cross products.
Cross products. All right, go ahead and solve. All right. I know, yeah. So 75p equals, what did you get when you multiplied?
25,000.
All right. 25,200. Okay, and then divide both sides by 75.
P equals 330.
Yeah, P equals 336 what?
Students.
Students, not movies. Okay, students. That's how many I can project. If 21 out of 75 people surveyed said I watch one movie per week, I can project that means 336 students in the school watch one movie a week. Does that mean that it's going to be, if I were to ask all 1,200, does that mean exactly 336? No. I'm just using it to, here's the key word, to estimate. Okay? I'm just trying to kind of make a projection. And, you know, maybe, I don't know why we would... well, you tell me. Maybe you have some thoughts. Why would a school want to do a survey like this? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. This is all made up, fictional. Aaliyah?
People are getting bad grades.
Oh, that's actually, was anybody else thinking that? I see some heads nodding. Hadley?
Maybe from what movies you're watching, they could have bad behavior.
Okay, so behavior. Yeah, like super violent movies, Colin.
Maybe it's just a movie
Maybe it's just a movie night. Yeah. Ready?
They want to see if kids are interested in movies because maybe they're doing like homecoming week or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if they did this survey and like literally none of the students watch movies and they all said 0, they're probably not telling the truth. But then they wouldn't have you wouldn't have a school sponsored activity where you're watching a movie if nobody likes movies. Joel?
They'd want to see if any of their kids have joy in their lives.
Oh, joy in their lives, yeah. Usually movies are fun to watch. That's not a good excuse for not doing homework, though, right? Hey, why didn't you do your homework? Well, I watched 3 movies last night, so I just didn't have time. Now, watching YouTube video, yes, obviously, especially if it's mine. Okay, all right, you guys did well on that. It's a short lesson. That's everything you need to know for 8.1.